Hi, I'm Chris Roselli.
And I'm Kevin Miller. Welcome to Western Window, the show made for you by students at Western Washington University.
In today's Western Window, we'll find out more about inquiry-based learning, what it is, and why it's important. We'll chat with one Western alum whose research is rewriting the book on one former Western president. And we'll watch what happens when students and alumni gather to celebrate the start of the school year.
We'll find out more about determination and willpower from one Western athlete's story. So stay with us as we explore our world through Western Window.
Welcome back. Our guest today is Ron Judd, who is a journalism instructor right here at Western Washington University. He's also a Western alumnus from the journalism program, class of 1985. You look pretty good, actually.
Thanks.
And is also a 2015 James W. Scott Research Fellow at the Center for Pacific Northwest Studies, which is a program of Western Library's heritage resources. So, Ron, thank you so much for coming on into the studio.
Thanks. Good to be here.
You've just finished one giant thesis, actually. This is how many pages?
It's about 450, give or take.
This is a giant
200
thesis.
too many.
So the thesis is on something that actually happened here at Western nearly 100 years ago, 80, 90 years ago.
80 years ago, yes.
And it has to do with the Red Square. What's the title of your thesis?
The thesis title is The Liberal Arts on Trial, and it's a story of what happened to Western's fourth president, Charles Fisher, who was a very influential leader here for 16 years, from 1923 until 1939. He was summarily fired at the end of that era by the governor of the state of Washington, Clarence Martin, after he was charged with being a communist, advocate of free love, an atheist, all sorts of various extremely left-wing charges, which were not really true, but did enough political damage and got enough foothold that the governor used them as a way to force him out as president.
That's really interesting. So why did you pick this out of all of the topics you could cover for a thesis? Why did you pick this?
I picked this topic because as a journalist, I've been a career journalist for 30 years who's always had an interest in history. And I'd always heard about the Fisher case as sort of this odd little blip in history, both in the Northwest and at Western, and something that I never saw a lot of information about, I heard a lot of detail about it. So I went and was very shocked to find that no one had chosen this subject as a subject of a historical, in-depth analysis in the form of a thesis or a dissertation. And so I said, I'll look and see what documents are available here to do this. And I was stunned at what I found, frankly. Frank Seifert was an interesting, cantankerous newspaperman of the era who was sort of running the Bellingham Herald and the Republican Party out of the same office down in the Herald building that we still see today for many years, and was, unlike supposedly most of our media people today, there was no detachment then between political operatives and journalism. And Seifert decided that he would head up this committee of 10 to 20 local people who wanted to force Fisher off the campus, and they all sort of had their different reasons. Some very petty sort of reasons, as simple as former faculty members who were laid off during the 1930s when a big portion of the faculty underwent a layoff here. Fisher chose that opportunity to get rid of people that he saw as sort of dead wood on the faculty, and they were not happy. And so they vowed to get him. Other people had property condemned around the campus because Western was expanding then from one building to the campus we see today. They didn't like that. They blamed him. They said, we're going to get him. So all these people sort of coalesced under the leadership of Frank Seifert to form this committee that actually wrote out 10 formal charges against the president, anything from promoting free love and bringing radical speakers to campus. I don't know what free love was in 1932. I'm kind of afraid to go there.
Maybe a little different than the 60s.
Yeah,
right?
But the main charge against him was that Western at that time had this very active guest speakers program, and every day the entire student body, which was about 1,000 people, would gather in Old Main and hear from us every week. Once a week they'd hear from a speaker, and Fisher decided that he should bring in the leading spokesmen of all sorts of different schools of thought at that time. So he had people who were leftist politicians, people who were in various forms of business, poets, authors, musicians, dairy farmers from Linden. I mean, it was this incredibly diverse group of people that we would be lucky to have speak on campus today, I think. Sure. But this committee used that and books in the library and other things, and basically sort of way before the Red Scares that we're familiar with from the 1950s, they perfected the guilt by association charge and said that if you are teaching our children these things, you're inculcating this in their minds and you're advocating it. They could not draw a distinction between educational teaching or academic freedom, basically, that we think of today, which is that you put out a wide variety of information for students and they decide what they believe based on that information. Mm-hmm. They couldn't see that concept, which was fairly new at the time. And so they attacked the president and tried to have him fired. And this happened basically between 1933 and 1935. Okay. And this all culminated in a hearing in Old Main in 1935 when Frank Seifert, ironically as the leading voice of public information in the community by running the Herald, demanded a closed hearing. Reporters from his own newspaper were not allowed to cover this hearing, which basically became a Star Chamber-like proceeding where Charles Fisher was essentially put on trial in front of the 3-member Board of Trustees. And that meeting went on for 5 hours and was the crux of a lot of this. And the details of that meeting were lost to history for many, many, many years until 3 years ago, a full transcript of that meeting that was taken by a court reporter who was there to preserve the public record, turned up at the Regional State Archives here near Western's campus. It was donated by a person who had found it literally in the basement of the Bellingham Herald next to some Christmas decorations and dropped it off not knowing what it was. And I came along, I think, as the first researcher since that document landed in the archives and opened the folder and went, oh my God, this is the transcript.
Sure.
So that transcript tells the story and it shows these two men, Fisher and Seifert, going at each other in really this sort of screenplay-like way where they're both incredibly eloquent people going at each other for hours. And at the end of the meeting, the trustees, the 3 trustees, met later privately and backed up Fisher and said, we reject all of these charges. We support him. He's an educational progressive who was ahead of his time in teaching the liberal arts at what used to be a small teachers college. He was the person who set it down the path to becoming the liberal arts college that it is today. And even though Fisher was exonerated for those specific charges, the group kept pressure on the governor's office for another 2 years. And the governor called the trustees to Olympia in 1938 and said, Fisher goes or you go. And they did the, may I say, dishonorable thing by telling Fisher to hit the road by the spring of 1939, which he did.
Wow. But his liberal arts model continued at Western even after his time had left.
His liberal arts model, that's the great thing about this story, survived and thrived because it was inculcated in the faculty here. You think of the slogan, active minds changing lives. He was the first active mind here who put that in motion, right? Western, as an institution, when he was fired, stripped all mention of it from the books of the minutes of the Board of Trustees. It's gone. There's no record. And that exists today. And I think that has created a vacuum that's been filled with a lot of misinformation about Fisher. Letters that he wrote to his family, all of whom became educators. At the time, he said, I feel like everything I've done here is for naught, which is sad and not true, because we now see what he did formed the basis of a much greater thing. And his case was important because he was able to be forced out by political pressure. At the time, it was possible for a governor to go to trustees of our universities and say, do what I want or you're gone. Yeah. Now, if the governor wished to do that, he would have to say, I'm able to back this up. There's improper conduct here. I'm able to back it up. The person can request a hearing before a judge. Right. And that was all because of Fisher, right? Because he fought this. And I think it says a lot about his character. In the 2 years after he was fired, he worked to change that state law when he could have easily just walked away. And there were many opportunities along the way here where Fisher could have taken the easy way out. They offered him a deal where he could go teach at the University of Washington in this honorary position for a year at his current salary. And he said, no, I won't do it because I won't lie about this. And so I think his stand was very heroic. And I think it's sad what happened to him. And I think that it's something that Western as an institution still hasn't really owned, and as part of our past. And I think that's sad because that sort of vow of silence that exists about him today, and the confusion prevents us from focusing on all the amazing work that he did here before that.
Sure.
Which at the time was very, very state of the art and unusual.
I wonder if his naming a Fisher Fountain in the middle of Red Square is a coincidence.
It is a coincidence and an unfortunate one. But actually, people make that association.
No
right?
kidding.
Yeah.
No kidding.
Red Square was never actually formally named Red Square
Yeah.
by the university. It's the bricks.
Yeah, it's square-shaped
The
and
papers.
it's
Exactly.
red.
Duh. But Fisher Fountain in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, oh, yeah, he was the red, right? That fountain, by the way, was something that was organized, built, and paid for by friends and faculty. It was not built by Western. The Western allowed it, but it's the only memorial to him on campus today, which I think is kind of sad.
Interesting. Well, thank you so much for coming into the studio, Ron. What a project. That's really quite an impressive piece you put together.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Good to be here.
Thank you. Ron Judd, who is Western alum from class of 1985 in our journalism program, who also is a 28-year veteran at the Seattle Times and is also a professor here at Western Washington University. So Ron, thank you again. Really appreciate you. Thousands of Western Washington University students, alumni, employees, and community members gathered in downtown for the inaugural Paint Bellingham Blue for WWU Festival. They were welcoming the city's newest residents, our incoming students, and celebrating the beginning of an exciting new academic year.
Starting a new tradition. We had a wonderful tradition of convocation and fireworks yesterday, and we hope to start this painting Bellingham Blue tradition starting today.
This exciting evening is all about a great relationship between our town, Bellingham, and our wonderful Western Washington University.
Basically, we're throwing a giant party downtown. That's the gist of it. We have, I believe, Boundary Bay is giving out free mac and cheese, root beer floats. We're gonna have a bunch of games, a bunch of vendors.
Vikings! Are you guys ready? Yeah! So basically, once the band starts playing, just follow the music.
Fostering a college town atmosphere, and we're building awareness for the strength of the Western community.
Great. It's fun to see the kids, welcome the kids.
We'd come down and welcome the new students to Bellingham and Western. Pretty nice place to be.
Got my start at Western. Well, I work at one of the local businesses just around the corner, and half the staff is Western alumni. So. Go Vikings! Go Vikings!
There are over 15,000 alumni who live in Whatcom County, and 1 in 7 Bellinghamsters is a Western alum. And so really it's an opportunity to get our alums out, the community out, all to welcome all of these new amazing students who have started at Western today as their first day of classes. Western is Bellingham's university. For the past 80 years, since the Herald letters went up, the Herald letters have never been anything other than red or white. Tonight, for the first time ever, they are going to be changing to Western Blue.
I think this is a great thing to welcome new students because hasn't really been anything like this. I heard some people say Western is maybe lacking a little bit in school spirit, and I think having a big party downtown is probably really cool for the freshmen to come to. Yeah, I'm so excited for that sign to turn blue.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Like him, inside and outside, through his house with the blue little window and a blue Corvette, and everything is blue for him and himself and everybody around.
I think this is a really wonderful tone for us to say, welcome to Bellingham, and be engaged, right? And this starts a conversation right away with the students that we're all here together.
Western Washington University pole vaulter Jacob Hino has faced a share of disappointments. He tore one hamstring his first year in college, and the other hamstring during his sophomore year. Driven by his passion for the sport, Jacob has fought to overcome his injuries and vault to heights he once thought unreachable.
I love pole vault because there's literally nothing like it in the entire world. You know, you're bolting down the runway, you feel the bend in the pole, and it skyrockets you. At that point, you're free. You know, you're just falling through the air. I pole vaulted in high school, and I really enjoyed it. But when I got to college, I just wanted to focus on school, focus on my studies, and I realized quickly that I made a mistake. I missed it a lot, and so I went to the coaches, and I was fortunate that they let me on the team. So sophomore year is when I started pole vaulting for Western. And I was back doing what I love. I was back at it, I was grinding, I was getting better. And then we go to our indoor conference championship, right? And I was pumped to do well. And I take one of my jumps and boom, I feel a pop in my left hamstring. And that's frustrating. As an athlete, you spend a lot of time perfecting your craft, and to have that taken away from you is really frustrating. But knowing myself, I knew I wasn't gonna let that get me down, right? And so I get right back at it. I start working hard, I start recovering, and I'm doing well. I recover, and next year rolls around, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to improve. We go to another meet. This is outdoor at this point, and I'm ready to go. I'm ready to do well, and boom, same thing happens, except this time it was my right hamstring. And man, I'm so frustrated at this point because I've spent all this time not only getting better, but also trying to recover my left hamstring. And now my right hamstring is injured. So I've got two bad hamstrings, and all this work I put in feels like it was for nothing. So I'm devastated at this point. I injured both my hamstrings, and I realized I've got a choice to make, right? I could either continue doing the sport I love, or I could quit. And I chose to keep going. So then this meet rolls around, early February, the UW Open. And I don't know what happened, but everything I've worked towards finally fell into place. All the technique, all the strength work I've been putting in, it finally came together at the right time. And I improved by almost a foot. Then a couple months later, I did the same thing again. I improved by almost a foot. So by the end of this year, I've improved by almost 2 feet, and that was just incredible. Honestly, the best part wasn't even improving by a foot. The best part was looking at where I've come from and being able to be proud of what I did. As an athlete, it was really hard because I wasn't proud of my accomplishments because I felt like I hadn't accomplished anything. And being in college, not improving a lot from high school, I felt like I didn't have anything to show for it, and I wasn't happy with where I was at. So to be able to overcome that obstacle, overcome injury, overcome just feeling stagnant was just an incredible feeling to kind of give me value and feel like I was actually doing what I was capable of doing.
The educator John Gardner described it powerfully. All too often, we are giving young people cut flowers when we should be teaching them to grow their own plants. Inquiry-based learning is a method of instruction that places the student, the subject, and their interaction at the center of the learning experience. Western's Center for Instructional Innovation and Assessment is bringing attention to the growing popularity of this technique by highlighting the work of several instructors at Western who are using the method. Active minds who are changing lives.
I first encountered inquiry-based learning and teaching as a beginning graduate student in the physics department at the University of Washington. And as an undergrad, I had been a physics major in a very traditional program where I sat in lectures and did my best afterwards to read through the book and my notes and figure it all out. But at the UW, I was a TA. The students meet once a week and go through some more interactive materials where they are asked questions and they discuss their ideas together, and the TAs are asked to facilitate that. So these were all familiar topics: Newton's third law, the work energy theorem, things I had studied and thought, well, I understand that, that's basic stuff, But the materials would ask questions, and we TAs would have to work out the answers for ourselves. We'd question each other. You'd have to take risks. You would answer questions not sure if you were right or not, but the other students, would correct you or give you feedback or build on your ideas, and as a group, you would progress through and make sense of it. And this was new to me and a complete revelation about what it means to understand and to learn physics. I fell in love with it, and I knew that's what I wanted to do. So I actually switched my research focus and earned my PhD for studying the learning and teaching of physics with the Physics Education Group, which is led by Professor Lillian McDermott. Our introductory physics program here at Western it's a large enrollment program. We have several hundreds of students at any given time in the course. There's multiple lecture sections. Since all the students from the different lecture sections take the same laboratory part of the course, they all share this experience of learning physics as a process of inquiry. Physics asks us to think about simple physical phenomena that are around us every day and make sense of how the world works. And people do that naturally in the course of their experience in their life. For example, young children quickly figure out exactly how hard to push on a wagon to make it move at a nearly constant speed, not speeding up or slowing down, or figure out how to take a projectile, a ball, and apply just the right angle and push to it to get it to go into the basket, right? It takes physicists, pages of algebra to figure that out. Kids can do it intuitively. However, in many cases, these kinds of rules of thumb that work well in everyday situations can obscure more universal underlying patterns and principles. So in the case of the wagon moving at a constant speed, Newton's laws tell us that objects move in a straight line at a constant speed all by themselves with no forces whatsoever acting on them, and that the action of an unbalanced force is to actually change the motion. So this seems to be in contradiction to the child's rule of thumb about the wagon. So in inquiry-based learning, we give students the opportunity to really wrestle with the new material, the scientific knowledge that's being presented, and reconcile it with their everyday intuitive knowledge.
As a physics major, I've gone through this experience. I've dealt with these difficult concepts, and so I know their struggle when they're struggling with this difficult concept and they can't get it. And I love the moment when they get it, and you can see their eyes are lighting up, and that's when it's just magical, because you've gone through that experience and you're helping another person go through that experience. When you're actually asking them questions and guiding their exploration that way, I think it's better because they're questioning what they're understanding, and when they actually answer the questions, they have to kind of gauge whether that fits in, and that way their group mates can kind of understand and see if it fits what they're thinking as well. And so I think by probing that and asking those questions, that's a good way to kind of get them collaborating. As a group, they have a better chance of having the correct model. Because by bouncing ideas back and forth, that way they can kind of refine their thinking and see what works and what doesn't work.
We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and we should use them in that proportion. So I think those of us who enjoy teaching love to share our passion for the subject and love to explain, and I certainly put myself in that camp. But listening first, listening to students' ideas, I think can help us to then tailor the explanations to better match the needs of students, and even maybe then to change what might be an explanation into a question. By the time students come to a college science course, they've had more than a decade of experience with learning and teaching, and they have pretty firm ideas about what learning and teaching is supposed to look like. If we incorporate student-centered, inquiry-based approaches to instruction, we're in a way changing the rules of the game of school, and that can create stress, understandably. These are all important features of independent learning. So students have a chance to practice and develop their ability to guide their own learning, which we feel is critical for a productive career in STEM, and we believe that kind of skill in directing one's own learning is something valuable that students can take away from the physics course, perhaps even more important than specific physics concepts.
That's it for this episode. We'll see you next time as we explore our world at and around Western Washington University.
Western Window is proud to partner with the following student publications. Crippling magazine is published twice each quarter and includes features, multimedia, and issues that affect lives across the greater Bellingham area. You can find it online at cripplinmagazine.com. The Western Front is the official newspaper of Western Washington University, published by the Student Publications Council and funded by your advertising dollars. The Western Front. Get it first, get it right at westernfrontonline.net. The Planet is Western Washington University's award-winning quarterly environmental publication and the only undergraduate environmental magazine in the United States. Explore The Planet online at planet.wwu.edu.